Hello and welcome to another episode of Autogefühl with me, AJ. Today we have a special episode. Why? Well, for three reasons. First of all, we have the new 911 Turbo, and we're not going to do a regular test. Instead, we're going to pit it against its other Porsche siblings to see how it stands in the lineup. And in order to do that, we've come up here way north in Finland, across the Arctic Circle, to Europe's largest snow testing facility. Number two, we're going to talk with rally race driving legend Walter Röhrl and have a hot lap with him in the Turbo and talk about how he feels about the 911 Turbo. And finally, well, today's my birthday. And as a special treat, the music in this film are going to be my original music. So, are you interested? Come on, let's go. Today we're not going to be able to do a full in-depth review, so make sure you go back and watch the 911 GTS review with Thomas that was out just a week ago, because the technology and the interiors are very similar. But quickly, I'm going to briefly describe the design. This is quintessentially Porsche, there's no doubt about that. You have two beautiful round headlamps, LED lights here, two large air intakes for the radiators, and a trunk which holds 115 liters. So just about enough for a weekend's luggage for two people. Here on the side, well, this is such an iconic design. Anybody who knows about cars can easily recognize that this is a Porsche 911 from a mile away. You have the sloping coupe roofline, large air intakes for the rear engine. We have 20-inch wheels. Because of the special snow driving event here today, these are not your standard tires. These are studded winter tires. And the Porsche 911 stands at about 4.5 meters long, and it's about 1.88 meters wide. Up here in the back, to distinguish the 911 Turbo, you can immediately notice the large wing. This is part of the active aerodynamic package, and at high speeds this rear wing rises. And down here you have a black bumper with really menacing twin exhausts. And finally, the Porsche 911 Turbo badging right in the middle. So the Porsche 911 Turbo comes with a 3.8 liter flat six bi-turbo. I mean, this is all you can see of it. Of course, you already knew that. This car makes 540 horsepower. It has all-wheel drive. It has an electronically regulated variable electronic locking rear differential. It has rear axle steering, so it speeds up to 50 kilometers per hour. The rear wheels turn by a few degrees in the opposite direction as the front wheels to effectively reduce the turning radius. And at speeds of above 80 kilometers per hour, they turn in the same direction to improve stability. A quick cockpit overview. First of all, you have several dials in the middle. You have 5 of them. You have your oil temperature, oil pressure. You have your speedometer. You have your tachometer right in the middle, very sporty. And this is a very useful screen. It has so many features, gives you so much of information, like for example the torque split between the front and the rear. You have you can set your chrono and you can time your laps. You can measure your G-forces. It gives you the torque curve and the performance you're getting out of the car, and a bunch of other useful information. And all the way on the right, you have the engine temperature and the fuel gauge. The steering wheel itself is very sporty, very common across the entire Porsche range. You have rollers on either side to control the volume and your phone here, and for the navigation of the menu here. And this is a really good way of doing it. A lot of sports cars have too many buttons and it's too confusing. This still lets you concentrate on the most important task at hand, and that is driving and enjoying the drive. You have your drive mode selector here, so it's very quick to switch between normal, sport, sport plus, and individual, like so. And you have paddle shifters for the 7-speed PDK, and overall a very sporty cockpit. Here we have the central MMI screen. It's a touch screen. You can access the tuner, your media, the navigation. The navigation is a very useful modern navigation system. I think it works pretty well, although we didn't really get to test it out too much. You have a lot of your car functions like your trip, your assistance systems, which you can control with this touchscreen. Down here you have your climate control buttons. So all the people who enjoy buttons, you'll be happy to know that there's plenty of switches and buttons for all your seat heaters and the AC temperature and the fan speed, all of that stuff. This is the gear lever for the 7-speed PDK. You can shift up and down by using the manual mode here or using the paddle shifters. And finally down here you have some buttons for changing your suspension, turning off the traction control, and the sunroof buttons as well. And finally, towards this side is a very clever way of having your drinks holders, the cup holder, sorry. It's very neat. We can put this back up so it's flush with the rest of the dashboard. And interestingly, these are so close to the air vents. So on a hot summer day, if you have a nice cold drink here, the cold air from the air-conditioned vents keep it cool, even on that side as well. You have a pretty tight glove box, but then again, this is a sports car. And finally, the seats. Well, these are sports seats, so you have leather and Alcantara in the middle, but you can also opt for the Sport Tex seats, which are animal friendly and what we prefer here in Autogefühl. The flat six engine, apart from providing the unique character for the 911 and a very low center of gravity, also means that unlike most sports cars or supercars, you do have a couple rear seats. Although you can barely call them rear seats. I'll demonstrate. So you have a lever over here, which tumbles the seat forward. And well, let me try. Oh, this is very tricky to get inside. And no, this is not happening. There's no way I can fit inside. I don't even think kids could fit inside here, but for namesake at least, you do have isofix points. So this space is best used to keep your luggage in case you can't fit everything in the front. So that's probably the best use for this space. Full disclosure, I've never driven a 911 before. Now, I know that this car is amazing. It's supposed to be. It's a fact. It's no longer an opinion. But I have a couple things that I'm not so sure about. Let me explain. First of all, it's the design. I know this is an iconic design and all the Porsche fanboys out there are going to yell at me, but I'm not so sure it's exactly pretty. Again, it's just my opinion. And secondly, the 911 has so many different variants and they have so many different numbers and nomenclatures, which for a simple-minded guy like me can get a bit confusing. But the biggest problem I have is the engine layout. Now let me explain. Generally, in a car that you probably drive every day, would have the engine up front, and perhaps it'll be a front-wheel drive car, so it's a very compact engine bay. There's a lot of weight because of the engine on the front wheels, gives a lot of traction. Simple. And you have all the space behind to make a very spacious and economical cabin. Then, in a lot of supercars and sports cars, the engine is in the middle. So in this case, the weight distribution is really nice. It's 50-50 balanced. When you're accelerating, the inertia of the engine shifts a little bit back, so there's enough grip on the rear wheels, which are driven in most sports cars. And when you're braking, the center of gravity still remains relatively in the middle, so that the car doesn't understeer as much, and you have much better balanced cornering ability. But here, in the 911, the engine is at the back, and I mean really at the back, slung over the rear wheels. Now this seems a bit illogical to me. First of all, you know, the weight transfer, the weight distribution is very much biased towards the rear. In fact, the early generations of the 911 were known to be really scary when accelerating over a crest. The front wheels would become so light that they would have no grip and no steering. Of course, in today's 911s, Porsche has mastered this kind of an engine layout, and this car is so balanced and poised, and they have improved their suspension and chassis dynamics. And the truth is, no other sports car manufacturer even dares try to do this. But first, before you learn how to run, you have to learn how to walk. So before we get to driving the 911 Turbo and testing it, let's first start off with the 911 Carrera and then let's move it up to the GT3 RS and perhaps even take a look at the 718 Spider. And don't forget, we can talk with Mr. Walter about how he feels, because he would know so much more than I do. And then finally, let's collect all the information we've gathered and then try to analyze the 911 Turbo. So we're going to start off with the 911 Carrera S. This has a 3-liter flat 6, which makes 420 horsepower, but this is only rear wheel drive. So let's turn it up. Oh, listen to that sound. Put it in drive, and we're going to head out onto the circle track. Okay. So before we head out on the track, first things first, let's turn off traction control. Let's put the PSM in sport rather, and let's wait for the thumbs up to get out onto the track. Okay, and here we go. All right, so flat 6, 3 liters, 420 horsepower, bi-turbo. Oh, and I lost it. Oh my goodness. Wow, this car is powerful. And the problem with drifting a rear wheel drive Porsche 911, like I said earlier, with the rear engine, is because of the weight all the way at the back. When you're accelerating, especially when you're trying to drift on the snow, the front becomes so light and it just understeers, and it's really hard to get grip and to direct the car into a drift and hold it. But once you get the rear wheels slipping, just tickle the throttle, hold the balance, look in the direction of where the drift is heading, not at the direction of the nose, and there we go. And listen to that glorious sound. Oh, it sounds so triumphant. You know, all those things that I said earlier about the design, well, that's still an acquired taste, but I mean, it's such a recognizable design. Anywhere in the world you go, anybody who knows anything about cars will immediately recognize the 911. And you know, the rear engine, I'm really, really loving it. I think it's so important to this car. You wouldn't want to have it any other way. And yeah, the nomenclature still is a bit confusing, but I'm sure Porsche fanboys out there are gonna argue with me right now and say, hey AJ, it's just because you're too stupid. But overall, I'm really happy with this car, and I'm excited to move it on to the next level and eventually try out the turbo. So now, for a change of pace, we're in the GT3 RS, the hardcore version with a sports racing steering wheel, a roll cage, carbon fiber seats, carbon fiber trim, has a 4-liter flat 6 making 500 horsepower, stiff suspension, completely badass. Oh, and did I mention the huge rear wing? So let's see how this handles the snow. All right, so now we're on the snow test track with the GT3 RS. Stop. Let me get my walkie-talkie down a little bit, turn the engine on. Oh, sounds so good. Let's put the suspension in sport, this 7-speed dual clutch PDK in sport, turn the traction control off, hold it for a second, and put the exhaust in the loud mode. Do you guys want to hear it? that sounds pretty badass. All right, here we go. Oh, this car is so quick. It's so agile. And you have paddle shifters. But this track is quite a technical track, plus you're in the snow. So it's basically just a first gear or second gear track. The traction control does allow it to slip quite a bit. Can you hear the engine? It sounds glorious. A little bit of a high-speed stretch right here. And when you're doing tight cornering, keep your thumbs out, push with the hand that's into the turn, so you're pushing yourself back into the seat. Don't take your hands off the wheel like I did, that's not good. Always cross your arms instead. And always make sure you have plenty of distance with the car in the front. And as always, have fun. Okay, so now we're switching over to a separate part of the track, so pit speed. Let's do a quick launch. Ready? This car does have narrower tires with studs. It's narrower, so there's more pressure on the tires and the studs dig into the snow much better. But of course, you do get a lot of slippage, as you can see, but this car handles so much better than the Carrera S that we just drove. I mean, honestly, I can feel such a world of difference. The stiffer suspension, the much more raw and visceral throttle response. It's a really good track car. I don't think this would be a great car to live with on a daily basis. I mean, look at this, how easy it is to hold the drift. It's so easy. And it's, like I said, it's stripped down. There's very little sound deadening and sound insulation. It gets really loud, especially because of all the snow being kicked up into the wheel arches. But the chassis is a little bit stiffer thanks to the roll cage in the back. So, and oh my god, that engine! If that doesn't get your adrenaline running, then I don't know what will. Oh, and when that happens, you overcook it and spin out. That's embarrassing. Anyway, nobody saw it, so it didn't happen. It blips the throttle on downshifts to rev match and hold the slide. And there we go. It is really loud in here, actually. Perfect track car, for sure. Great track car. Especially for tracks like the Nürburgring, which are narrow and technical. I mean, that's what this car is known for. Anyway, since this event lets me drive pretty much any Porsche I can and I want to, I think it's time for me to jump out of this and jump into something else before we finally get into the turbo. I'll see you soon. So I am sitting here in the 911 Turbo with rally race legend Mr. Walter Röhrl. Thank you so much for taking me on this taxi lab. This is the man who in the 1980s Portugal Rally learned to drive an entire stage pretty much blindfolded. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah, okay. It was a good time, yes, that's right. But it's a long time.
Long time ago?
Long time ago. I don't remember anymore very well because time has changed now. And today it's different world. Cars are different, much easier to drive than in my time, much quicker.
Yes.
But still a lot of fun.
So, what do you think has changed the most about the 911 from when it was, from its early years?
Yes, of course. First of all, the most important change is now we have four-wheel drive, which makes the traction so much better on this car. Even if before, without four-wheel drive, the 911 was a car with a rear engine. He had a good traction already at this time, but now with four-wheel drive, it's so much quicker and it's so much easier to drive. That is a car which can now today, everybody can go fast in a 911. It wasn't like this 25 years ago. It was something special where I was able to go fast in a 911. But today it's so easy. You can see it's just nothing, just playing a little bit, and the car is doing exactly what I want. It's good like this, that many people can really enjoy this fantastic car.
And what do you want to see going forward in the future for the 911?
It would be maybe a good idea again to try to save weight, which is
it's tricky nowadays with all the security and safety regulations.
Regulation and all this comfort, but weight is so important part if you want to move with a car sporty. That is not so much weight is inside, and of course the rest is perfect. If it stays like this, I don't think we can do so many things better than now. That is.
And what is your favorite model in the 911 range? The Turbo S? Or?
Yeah, the Turbo S, I think, is the best car you can drive. Yeah.
And what
something, you know, you can do everything with this car. You can, in the morning, you can go out shopping. Then you can go on a business trip. On weekend, you go on a racetrack. On in winter time, you go skiing. that is
the car for all occasions.
That is fantastic. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay,
I'll see you soon.
Enjoy your stay and your driving.
Stuck in the dead grind, me and the deadlines. Gotta do as you're told. Work for your paycheck and live like a reject. Lose yourself and grow old. Where will you go? Since all your friends have long forgotten. Hang up the phone. It's not.
So we're here in the 718, the Cayman S to be exact. So this has a 2.5 liter flat 4 turbo engine, mid-mounted, and it makes 350 horsepower. Now, people have been saying that the 718.
You are ready.
Cool. The 718 has become so close to the 911. So let's see if that's true or not. Already, I kind of understand why. This car is, because it's so much smaller. First, hold on. Let's turn it to sports suspension. Raise the spoiler. Sport mode, traction control, and exhaust. Here we go. Yes, because it's a little bit smaller, don't get me wrong, it's really spacious on the inside, but it kind of wraps itself around you. It feels like you're wearing a jacket more than trying to handle a big, piece of metal. And another thing is I really like this engine. It sounds so nice. I'm going to turn the traction control off because you can't hear it otherwise. Now you can. Because it's sitting right beside your head, right behind you. You can hear it growling and it sounds really nice. Can you hear that? Yes, it's only a 4 and it's a turbo, but it burbles and it sounds really cool. And it, again, makes the whole driving experience that much better. And you can... Yeah, I'm going to turn down the radio a little bit so you can hear me. And because it's mid-engined, it's so much better balanced than the 911. You can really control the corner with just the throttle on to understeer a little bit and let go of the throttle, and then the car ducks in, grips the front wheels, and you get a really nice tight rotation. So it's much more intuitive for me at least, because you know, never really driven a 911 before. So let's turn the traction control completely off. See what I mean? It's so well balanced. And the throttle response is so immediate. I mean, you can drift this car with one hand. The burbling engine as well. I do see why they say, you know, that the 718 is getting awfully close to the 911. It's smaller, it's lighter, it's only rear wheel drive, but in many ways it's much better balanced, and the throttle response is also instantaneous. There is power exactly when you need it. This is quite a technical track, so we don't have too many open straights, but overall this is a great car to compare with the 911 Turbo. Finally, here we are in the 911 Turbo. It has a 3.8 liter flat 6 bi-turbo, all-wheel drive, has 540 horsepower, and the all-wheel drive system is primarily rear wheel biased, but when you're coming out of a corner like this in a drift, it can even send more power to the front to pull you out really quickly. To aid in the handling, it also gets a electronically regulated locking rear differential, and it even has rear wheel steering. So at speeds up to 50 kilometers per hour, the rear wheels turn in the opposite direction by just a few degrees, so that the effective turning radius of the car becomes smaller. And at speeds above 80 kilometers per hour, it turns in the same direction as the front wheels to make it more stable and planted. And well, this car is so fun to drive. The steering wheel is so nice. It has such a great weight to it. The engine sounds great. I'll show you that. I'll open it up in a little bit, but I'm just doing a couple pace laps to get used to this track. We're on a very tight technical track, and there's quite a bit of traffic. As you can see, there's a lot of other guys on the track with us today. And if you go out, you're gonna get stuck in the walls, and then the Cayenne has to come and pull you out, so don't want that. But let's see, apart from that, I think this car, like Mr. Walter also said, is one of the best 911s, because you have it as a daily driver, then it's no problem. You can put your kids in the back seat, you can take the groceries, you can put your suitcase in the front, and in normal mode like right now, with everything in comfort mode, it's supple, it's still fun and engaging, but it's not too loud, it's comfortable. And then you have the magic switch here. So let's put it into Sport Plus, and immediately the engine shifts down a couple gears, it opens up the exhaust, and it lets you have more fun. Like that. And it's so easy to hold the drift because of this four-wheel drive system. It's such an intelligent four-wheel drive system. And you know, when I said earlier about the Boxster and how the Boxster is getting awfully close to the 911, that is true, I think, but at the same time, nothing can ever mimic or replace the sensation and the character of a rear-engined car. It's truly something, if you haven't experienced it, you really have to understand what I'm talking about, because you might be like, what are you going on about, AJ? But trust me, it's something that it's hard to put into words. Let's have some more fun. Let's turn off the traction control. Let's put it into sport mode. So, vehicle stability system limited. I like the sound of that. So now, of course, it slides a lot more, almost instantaneously. But again, you balance the throttle with the all-wheel drive and keep your thumbs out when you're doing this kind of driving so you don't hit your thumb here, and always reach over your opposing arm. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And talking about the steering wheel, it has Alcantara, so I really like this because it gives you enough grip, but at the same time it's not sticky. You know, it's a very nice fuzzy texture, which I like. And similar to the other 911s that we drove earlier today, including the GT3 RS, there isn't too many buttons on the steering wheel, so it doesn't distract you. There's nothing about this car which distracts you from the task at hand, and that's to drive this car as fast as you can around a nice circuit like this. Oh yeah. But I must say, I don't hear the engine too much. I would have liked to have a louder engine. This is the 3.8, it is the big engine, you know, but I mean, of course, I can't expect it to sound like the GT3 RS. That's a totally different ballpark. But even like the the Cayman, same thing, 718, or even the Carrera 4S or the Carrera S, it's probably because I'm not really able to utilize and open the engine, let the engine stretch its legs out in this really tight technical circuit, because there's so many turns and it's getting a bit dark, and when you have so much of snow and gray cars in front of you, it's hard to distinguish the turns that are coming up ahead. I mean, I've been driving this track enough now, so I know where it is, and we have pylons, but I'm not really able to stretch the legs of this car and test its limits. But apart from that, is the turbo the best 911? That's a good question, and honestly, I'm not so sure. The Turbo S especially is upwards of 200,000 euros. That's a lot of money by anybody's standards, especially for technically a really good sports car. It is, you know, you can argue whether it's a supercar or a sports car, but a really nice long drift here. But to me, the 718S, the Cayman or the Boxster S, seems to be the best bargain, because you get really good chassis dynamics with the mid-engine layout. You get a lot of power, sufficient amount of power for the small, lightweight chassis. Of course, you don't have the rear seats, which is a big plus point for the 911. But on the whole, on public roads, you can't really drive either of these cars to their maximum. And how many people who own this car are really going to take it out on the track? And certainly not in situations like this. This is a special event. So if you don't have that much money, I would still say the 718 is a better bet. And among the 911s, I'm just in love with the GT3 RS. I mean, I can go on and on about that car. I wish I was still driving that car. I mean, now I'm just becoming really, really greedy, you know. When you let me drive all the 911s that I want, you know, I'm getting a bit too greedy. But if given the choice, if I could drive away with any car from today, I would most probably still pick the GT3 RS. But oh my god, that was such a fun drift. And I'm talking to you, I'm reviewing the car, I'm testing the car. At the same time, it's so easy to hold such a nice, effective drift. Of course, you know, I'm cheating. This is still a sport-oriented traction control. It's not completely off. If I do turn it off, I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up in the snow wall, and I don't want to do that because it'll be embarrassing. But see, one hand. And you can see there's so many screens, like I showed you earlier when I was talking about the interiors. You have meters to show you the power distribution between the front and the rear, and a really nice ball on the steering wheel to navigate up and down the menus. You know, I can't really show you all these right now because the steering wheel isn't staying straight. There we go. So you have your G-force meter, for example, And let me just turn down the radio again. Oh, we have a little bit of a mishap, so I have to stop right now. Maybe we can show you. That's what happens when you get a bit too excited. So at this time, let me take the opportunity to just run through the interiors really quick. Again, for the turbo, you have multiple dials up front. You can change the screen you want to. You can have a chronometer and your G-force meter and your torque meter, and you have your vehicle status, the amount of pressure you're getting with the turbocharger. So a lot of useful information. And again, the steering wheel has this very useful driving mode selector, quick access. So overall, I mean, what can I say that hasn't already been said about the 911? There's very little things that I can add to the saga that is the 911. But I want to hear what you guys think. So put your comments in the section below. So the 911 Carrera starts at around 97,000 euros. The turbo, is around 175,000 euros. And if you want the Turbo S, well, you're looking at something upwards of 200,000 euros. To summarize, well, what can I say that hasn't already been said about the 911 Turbo? It's the quintessential 911. It has the pedigree, the charisma, the personality, and the performance. And it's a very desirable car. However, I do still have a couple things that I'm not so sure about. For example, at this price point, if you want something a little bit more raw and visceral and a more track-focused race car, for a few thousand euros more, you do get the GT3 RS, which is phenomenal. And at the same time, if you want something which is a little bit more practical, where you can actually fit 2 adults in the rear seat in luxury, then the Panamera Turbo, which is again a phenomenal car, is also roughly the same amount. So it all comes down to what you really want and how much you can afford. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.